in the world of the ultra-rich, power isn't always loud. It doesn't always wear a designer label or announce itself with a roar. Sometimes true power is quiet, observant, and travels in coach. This is a story about a moment when the flashy, surface-level world of airline status collided with the silent, deep-seated power of ownership. It's about a flight crew who believed they were judging a passenger by her worn-out canvas bag, when in reality they were being judged by the woman whose family had just bought their entire world. What they thought was a moment of petty fun became the most consequential flight of their lives, triggering a corporate earthquake that would shake an entire airline to its foundation. The air in John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 4 was a familiar symphony of chaos. It was a thick, humid cocktail of jet fuel, Cinnabon, and human anxiety. Wheels of roller bags clicked a frantic rhythm on the polished floors, and announcements for final boarding calls echoed like the pronouncements of impatient gods. Amidst this orchestrated pandemonium, 19-year-old Amara Adebayo was an island of calm. She sat near the expansive windows of Gate B42, her focus entirely on the tablet resting on her lap. Her charcoal pencil, a digital brush on the screen, moved with a fluid, practiced grace, sketching the elegant curve of an airplane's wing as it was serviced on the tarmac below. She was dressed for a 6-hour flight to San Francisco, not for a fashion show. Her clothes were a uniform of comfort: soft grey sweatpants, a simple black t-shirt from a concert she'd attended, and a pair of well-worn sneakers. Beside her on the floor rested her carry-on, a faded olive-green canvas tote bag. It was devoid of any logo or luxury branding. Its corners were soft with wear, and a small frayed patch near the strap told a story of long use, not of a recent purchase from a high-end boutique. To the casual observer, she was just another college student, perhaps flying on a budget ticket her parents had scraped together for. It was a perception she not only tolerated, but cultivated. Anonymity was its own form of luxury, one her father, Tunde Adebayo, could no longer afford. The trouble began when the boarding call for AuraWing Airlines Flight 212 was announced. The gate agent, a man in his late 20s with a slick of blonde hair, gelled a little too perfectly, and a name tag that read Kyle, spoke into the microphone with a voice that oozed condescension. "We will now begin pre-boarding for our esteemed first-class passengers, military personnel, and families needing extra assistance." Amara remained seated, finishing a shading detail on her sketch. She was in seat 2B, a first-class ticket her father had insisted upon. "For safety, Amara. Just let me have this peace of mind," he had said. She had reluctantly agreed, though she would have been perfectly content in economy. As the pre-boarding line thinned, Kyle's eyes scanned the remaining passengers. They landed on Amara, then flicked down to her simple canvas bag, and a small, cruel smirk played on his lips. He was the gatekeeper of this little kingdom, and he enjoyed wielding his minuscule power. When the call for first class came, Amara packed her tablet into her tote, stood up, and approached the gate. She pulled out her phone to show her digital boarding pass. Kyle took one look at her phone screen, then at her, his eyes doing a deliberately slow, insulting sweep from her simple sneakers up to her plain t-shirt, and finally settling with theatrical disdain on the canvas bag. "First class." He asked, his tone a blend of disbelief and amusement. He leaned in conspiratorially, his voice low enough not to be a public announcement, but loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Are you sure about that Zone 1 is for first class? Maybe you misread your ticket." Amara felt a familiar, weary pang. This was the tax on her chosen anonymity. I'm sure she said, her voice even. Seat 2B. Kyle's smirk widened. Wow. Okay. Lucky you. Win a contest. He scanned her pass with a flourish, the machine beeping its confirmation. As he handed her phone back, he gestured to her tote bag. Just so you know, even for first class, there's a fee for checked baggage. We wouldn't want any surprises at the end of the trip. He was insinuating she couldn't afford it, that her bag looked like something she'd have to check. The insult was designed to be a pinprick, a small cut to assert his superiority. Amara met his gaze for a brief moment, a flicker of something cold and appraising in her dark eyes, before she simply nodded. I'll keep that in mind. She walked down the jet bridge, the forced echo of his "enjoy your flight" following her. She could feel his eyes on her back, and she knew he was already sharing the joke with his colleagues. As she stepped onto the aircraft, she was greeted by the lead flight attendant. Her name tag read Brenda. She was a woman in her 50s, with impeccably styled blonde hair, and a smile that didn't reach her cold blue eyes. She looked like she had been carved from Nordic ice. The look she gave Amara was one of instant dismissal. Clearly, Kyle had already signaled his amusement to her. "Welcome aboard," Brenda said, her voice sweet as saccharin. But as Amara passed, Brenda turned to the other flight attendant, a younger woman named Chloe, and whispered just loud enough for Amara to catch, "Looks like the raffle winner has arrived." Chloe giggled a high-pitched sycophantic sound. Amara ignored them, her face a neutral mask. She located her seat 2B, a spacious pod, with plush leather and its own entertainment screen. As she went to place her canvas tote in the overhead bin, a male flight attendant, Liam, rushed over. "Allow me, miss," he said, but his tone was laced with the same mocking undertone. He took the bag from her, feigning a slight grunt, as if it were heavy. "Wow. What have you got in here?" "Your life savings," Brenda, who was now nearby, chimed in with a fake tinkling laugh. "Liam, be nice. Every passenger is valuable to us. Let's make sure everyone feels welcome." The emphasis was a clear, targeted jab. Amara settled into her seat, the luxurious leather feeling like a strange costume. She watched the crew as they moved through the cabin, their performance of premium service a well-oiled machine. But to her, the gears were now visible, grinding with petty cruelty. They fawned over a man in a tailored suit, across the aisle, a Mr. Harrison, who looked like a seasoned executive. They laughed at his jokes, refilled his champagne glass before it was half empty, and addressed him with a reverence reserved for deities. When Brenda came to take pre-departure drink orders, she stopped at Amara's seat. "And for you, dear water juice," the implication was clear. Champagne would be wasted on her. "Just water is fine." "Thank you," Amara said quietly. As Brenda turned away, she caught Chloe's eye and gave a subtle roll of her eyes. The performance was for each other, as much as it was against Amara. They were a clique reinforcing their own sense of superiority by creating an outsider. Amara pulled out her sketchbook and her actual charcoal pencils this time. The digital screen felt too cold, too impersonal for what she needed to capture. She began to draw. She sketched Kyle's smirking face, the self-satisfaction etched in the lines around his mouth. She drew Brenda's icy smile, the hardness in her eyes. She drew them not with anger, but with an almost anthropological precision. She was an observer, a documentarian of human folly. Her bag, the object of their ridicule, contained the tools of her true passion art. The tote had been a gift from her late grandmother, a fellow artist, and it had traveled the world with Amara from the museums of Florence to the street art alleys of Melbourne. It held more value to her than any designer handbag ever could. The man in the suit, Mr. Harrison, glanced over at her. He saw the simple clothes, the focused girl sketching in a notebook, and he too made a quick, subconscious judgment. Probably a student artist, maybe her parents have some money. He was a man who understood branding, and hers was non-existent. He dismissed her and returned to his financial newspaper, momentarily oblivious to the crew's targeted campaign. The cabin door was sealed. The safety demonstration began, and as the plane pushed back from the gate, Amara felt a sense of being trapped. It wasn't claustrophobia. It was the feeling of being locked in a small space with people who had already judged and sentenced her without a trial, and she knew with a certainty that chilled her that the flight had only just begun. The ascent of AuraWing Flight 212 was smooth, a seamless climb into the vast, indifferent blue. The sun streamed through the first-class windows, glinting off polished surfaces and champagne flutes. But for Amara Adebayo, the atmosphere inside the cabin was growing increasingly hostile. A pressurized chamber of passive aggression orchestrated by Brenda Jensen. Once the seatbelt sign pinged off, the crew sprang into action. Brenda moved through the cabin with the practiced poise of a monarch in her court. She distributed hot towels with a flourish, her smile warm and engaging for every passenger except one. When she reached Amara, the smile became a tight, forced line. She practically tossed the neatly rolled towel onto Amara's side table. Next came the meal service. Brenda had taken orders before takeoff. Amara had requested the salmon with quinoa. When Liam arrived with the food cart, he served Mr. Harrison his steak with a deferential bow. He served the woman in front of her the pasta with a charming compliment on her scarf. He bypassed Amara, completely moving to the other side of the aisle. Amara waited patiently. 10 minutes passed. Brenda was now serving drinks, laughing with another passenger. Finally, Amara caught her eye and gave a polite, questioning look. Brenda's face feigned a sudden dramatic realization. "Oh heavens, did we forget you, dear?" She rushed over, her expression a caricature of apology. "I am so terribly sorry. We're just so used to our first-class regulars, and sometimes, well, things get missed." She turned to Liam. "Liam, did we run out of the salmon?" Liam, a key player in this theatre of cruelty, put a hand to his chin in mock thought. "You know, I think we did. I believe the last one went to Mr. Henderson in 3A. It was a blatant lie. Amara had heard the woman in 3A order the chicken." "Oh, what a shame," Brenda sighed, turning back to Amara. "We have the cheese plate left. Or perhaps some extra peanuts. I can get you a whole bag." The offer of peanuts, the quintessential economy snack, was a deliberate, pointed insult. The quiet fury that had been simmering in Amara began to crystallize into a cold, hard resolve. This was no longer just unprofessionalism. It was a coordinated, malicious game. "The salmon is fine," Amara said, her voice soft but unwavering. "I'm sure you can find it." Brenda's plastic smile faltered for a second. The girl wasn't backing down. "As I said, I do believe we are out." "Please check again," Amara insisted, holding Brenda's gaze. For a moment, the cabin seemed to fall silent around them. Mr. Harrison, the businessman across the aisle, lowered his newspaper. His brow furrowed. He was starting to notice that the crew's behavior toward the young woman was more than just dismissive. It was becoming a pattern. It was unprofessional, and if there was one thing Gerald Harrison detested, It was unprofessionalism. It was bad for business. Brenda, realizing she was creating a scene, relented with a huff. "Fine. I will see what I can do." She disappeared behind the galley curtain. A few moments later, she returned with the salmon dish, placing it on Amara's tray, with a clatter that was anything but gentle. "Found one," she said, through gritted teeth. It must have been hiding. Amara simply replied, "Thank you." She ate her meal in silence, every bite feeling like a small victory. But she knew the crew wasn't finished. The main event, the one that would seal their fate, centered on the humble canvas tote bag. After the meal service, many passengers were either watching movies or dozing. Amara had her tote bag in the overhead bin, directly above her seat. Brenda, on a mission to assist Mr. Harrison with his coat, made a show of opening the bin next to Amara's. "Let me just get this tucked away for you, Mr. Harrison," she cooed. As she went to close the bin door, her arm swung out with a motion that was just a little too wide, a little too forceful. Her elbow connected squarely with Amara's tote bag, sending it tumbling out of the adjacent, still-open bin. The bag hit the floor with a soft thud, but its contents spilled across the aisle with surprising reach. There was no gold, no jewels, no wads of cash. Instead, what skittered across the floor was a high-end Wacom graphics tablet, a worn paperback copy of the annotated Turing, her leather-bound sketchbook, and a small, intricately carved wooden bird her grandmother had made. Brenda gasped, a sound dripping with manufactured horror. "Oh my goodness, I am so clumsy." She knelt down, making a great show of gathering the items. She picked up the sketchbook, her thumb brushing against the cover as if it were a dirty rag. "Be careful with that," Amara said, her voice sharp for the first time. Brenda looked up, her expression one of mock sincerity. "Of course, dear. We wouldn't want to damage your little drawings." She picked up the graphics tablet, holding it up for Chloe, who was hovering nearby to see. "And look at this. It's some kind of electronic etch-a-sketch. How quaint." Chloe stifled a laugh. That was the breaking point. The bag was personal. The sketchbook was her soul, and the carved bird was her most precious memory of her grandmother. The crew hadn't just insulted her. They had desecrated something sacred. Amara unbuckled her seatbelt and stood, her presence suddenly filling the space more than her small frame should have allowed. "That is a professional-grade graphics tablet. The book is for my research, and my sketchbook contains my portfolio," she said, her voice low and dangerously calm. "Your clumsiness is a violation of my personal property, and your comments are unacceptable. I want your name and the names of your colleagues." Brenda, shocked by this sudden display of authority, actually took a step back. But her pride and years of entrenched superiority quickly took over. "Now let's not get hysterical," she said, her voice regaining its patronizing edge. "I apologized. It was an accident." "It was not." Amara stated, her eyes like chips of obsidian. "It was the culmination of a series of targeted insults that began at the gate. I will not tolerate it." Mr. Harrison was now watching with undisguised interest. He had seen the whole thing. The accidental swing of the elbow was anything but. The girl was right. This was harassment. Brenda, seeing she was losing control, decided to double down. "I am the lead flight attendant on this aircraft. You are a passenger. You will return to your seat, or I will be forced to report you for creating a disturbance." Amara held her ground. She looked past Brenda, her eyes sweeping over Chloe's panicked face and Liam's arrogant smirk. She had given them a chance to retreat, an off-ramp from the disastrous road they were on. They had refused. Slowly, deliberately, she sat back down in her seat. She didn't say another word. She simply picked up her phone. She didn't open a social media app to complain. She didn't text a friend. She opened a secure messaging app with a single contact in it, a contact labeled Chief of Staff. Her fingers typed a short, precise message. Flight AW 212 JFK to SFO. Severe crew misconduct in first class. Lead FA Brenda Jensen. Gate agent Kyle Miller. Situation is hostile. Please have a corporate representative meet me upon landing. No further action needed from me at this time. Just lodging an official record. She hit send. The message was encrypted and delivered instantly to a man named Julian Vance, the ever-efficient, ever-loyal chief of staff to her father. The message was a pebble, but she knew it would land in the corporate pond with the force of a boulder. A time-stamped, undeniable record had been created. The game was over. All that was left was for the other players to realize they had already lost. The descent into San Francisco was picturesque. The Golden Gate Bridge emerged from its blanket of fog, and the bay sparkled under the afternoon sun. Inside the first-class cabin of Flight 212, however, the climate was frigid. After the confrontation in the aisle, the crew had treated Amara with a kind of terrified avoidance, refusing to make eye contact. Brenda wore a mask of tight-lipped fury, her earlier confidence replaced by a simmering resentment. She believed she had successfully put the charity case back in her place. As the plane taxied to the gate, Brenda made her final announcement, her voice crisp and professional once more. On behalf of AuraWing Airlines and this entire crew, I'd like to thank you for flying with us today. When she made eye contact with Mr. Harrison, she gave a warm, genuine smile. When her gaze inadvertently passed over Amara, it was as if she were looking at an empty seat. The seatbelt sign switched off. Mr. Harrison, the businessman, gathered his briefcase. As he passed Amara, he paused for a fraction of a second. He gave her a slight, almost imperceptible nod of respect. He had seen everything, and his verdict had been rendered. Amara remained in her seat, calmly packing her sketchbook and tablet back into their worn canvas sanctuary. She was in no hurry. She let the other passengers deplane the sound of their chatter and rolling bags fading down the jet bridge. Brenda, Chloe, and Liam stood near the galley, whispering amongst themselves. They shot venomous glances toward Amara, annoyed that she was delaying their post-flight routine. "Can we help you with something?" Brenda finally asked, her patience clearly gone. "Or are you planning on moving in?" "I'm waiting for someone," Amara replied evenly, not looking up from her bag. Suddenly, the normal flow of activity on the jet bridge was disrupted. The cleaning crew who had been waiting to board was held back. A new set of footsteps approached, heavy, purposeful, and fast. 3 figures appeared at the aircraft's entrance. 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in immaculate dark business suits that screamed corporate headquarters. They moved with an urgency that instantly electrified the atmosphere. At the lead was a man Amara recognized from company photos, Robert Maxwell, the CEO of AuraWing Airlines. His face, usually tanned and confident in press releases, was pale and slick with a film of sweat. His eyes were wide with a terror that was palpable. Brenda's posture changed instantly. She straightened up, a brilliant, welcoming smile flashing across her face, ready to greet the unexpected VIPs. This was a chance to impress the top brass. Mr. Maxwell. What a surprise, she gushed, stepping forward. "Welcome to San Francisco. I hope everything is—" Maxwell walked past her as if she were a piece of furniture. His eyes darted around the cabin, frantically searching. They locked onto Amara, still sitting calmly in seat 2B. A wave of relief and terror washed over his face in equal measure. He rushed to her seat, his two colleagues trailing behind him like nervous shadows. "Ms. Adebayo," he stammered, his voice hoarse. "Ms. Amara Adebayo, I am Robert Maxwell. I came as soon as I heard. On behalf of every single employee at AuraWing Airlines, I want to offer my deepest, most sincere apologies for what you experienced on this flight." The name Ms. Adebayo hung in the air. Brenda Jensen froze mid-smile. Her brain struggled to process the information. Adebayo. Where had she heard that name? It tickled at the edge of her memory. Something from the business news channel. She sometimes watched something about a massive corporate takeover. And then, like a bolt of lightning, the connection was made. Echo Capital Partners. The Nigerian-American billionaire Tunde Adebayo. The man who had just 3 months ago completed a hostile takeover, purchasing a 60% controlling stake in the financially bleeding AuraWing Airlines. The new owner. The King Adebayo. Brenda's blood ran cold. The carefully constructed world of her own superiority shattered into a million pieces. The girl in the cheap clothes, the raffle winner, the charity case with the quaint art supplies, was the daughter of the man who now signed all of their paychecks. She felt a wave of nausea so intense she had to grip the galley counter to stay upright. Chloe's face had gone completely white, and Liam looked like he was about to be physically ill. Amara slowly stood up, her quiet dignity. A stark contrast to Maxwell's frantic energy. "Mr. Maxwell," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Thank you for coming. But your apology, while appreciated, is misdirected. You shouldn't be apologizing because of who my father is. You should be horrified that this is how your crew treats any passenger they deem to be beneath them." Her words were like a physical blow to the CEO. Mr. Harrison, who had been lingering on the jet bridge drawn by the commotion, stepped back onto the plane. "She's absolutely right," the businessman said, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "My name is Gerald Harrison. I was in seat 2C. I witnessed the entire incident. The conduct of your lead flight attendant and her crew was the most appalling, deliberate, and unprofessional display I have ever seen in 30 years of flying. It was a disgrace to your airline." Maxwell looked as if he was about to collapse. A witness. A credible, first-class, frequent flying witness. He turned to Brenda, his face now a mask of cold fury. "Is this true? Ms. Jensen?" Brenda opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her mind was a whirlwind of panic. She could see her career, her pension, her entire life flashing before her eyes. She wanted to deny it, to lie, to say the girl was crazy, but with Mr. Harrison standing there as a witness, she knew it was hopeless. Amara delivered the final, devastating blow, though her tone remained devoid of malice. It was a simple statement of fact. "There's no need to interrogate her, Mr. Maxwell. I'm sure you'll find everything you need on the CVR. And in the report I sent to my father's office 2 hours ago. CVR, the cockpit voice recorder, while it primarily recorded the cockpit advanced new systems. Systems implemented by ECO. Capital's new security overhaul often had audio sensors in the forward galley and cabin for safety and quality control purposes. It was a new protocol. One Brenda had dismissed as corporate overreach in a recent memo. She had never imagined it could be used like this. They had been performing their little drama on a live stage with the king himself in the audience. Robert Maxwell looked at Brenda, and in his eyes he didn't see anger anymore. She saw something far worse, the cold, impersonal finality of a corporate executioner. Her fate and the fates of her co-conspirators had been sealed at 35,000 feet. The cheap canvas bag she had mocked had, in effect, just ended her life as she knew it. The emergency board meeting was convened at AuraWing's San Francisco headquarters less than 24 hours later. The room was a study in tense opulence, with a long mahogany table polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the grim faces of the dozen executives seated around it. Robert Maxwell sat at the head of the table, looking as though he hadn't slept in a week. The seat of honor, however, was empty. Its occupant was projected onto a massive wall-sized screen, his presence more commanding than anyone physically in the room. Tunde Adebayo. He appeared via a flawless high-definition video link from his office in New York. He wore a simple, dark blue tunic, but the sheer force of his personality made it feel like armor. His face was calm, but his eyes held a fire that made seasoned executives shrink in their leather chairs. He was not shouting. He was not angry. He was something far more terrifying. He was lethally disappointed. Julian Vance, his chief of staff, sat just out of frame, a silent, ever-present aide. "Good morning, Mr. Adebayo began, his voice a low, resonant baritone that filled the room. "I will not waste time on pleasantries. Mr. Maxwell, please summarize the findings from yesterday's incident." Maxwell, voice trembling slightly, read from a prepared statement. "Flight AW 212. The review of the forward cabin audio confirms multiple instances of targeted derogatory and unprofessional conduct by lead flight attendant Brenda Jensen, flight attendants Chloe Webb and Liam Porter, and gate agent Kyle Miller, directed at passenger Amara Adebayo. The conduct included verbal insults, denial of service, and the deliberate mishandling of personal property." He swallowed hard. Furthermore, a corroborating statement was provided by passenger Gerald Harrison, CEO of Harrison Logistics and an AuraWing Diamond Medallion member for 12 years. A low murmur went through the room. Losing the goodwill of a corporate titan like Harrison was a disaster in its own right, Mr. Adebayo listened, his expression unchanging. When Maxwell finished, a heavy silence descended. "Thank you, Robert," Mr. Adebayo said finally. "Let me be unequivocally clear so that no one in this room misunderstands what is about to happen. My actions today are not born from the wounded pride of a father. Yes, the passenger was my daughter. That is how this rot was brought to my attention. But if my daughter had been treated with the dignity she deserved, I would never have known that a regular paying customer, a student, an elderly woman, a young man on his first business trip, might be subjected to this same humiliation." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes seeming to pierce through the screen. "I did not invest $1.7 billion of my partner's capital to acquire a brand that rots from the inside out. I invested in the promise of what AuraWing could be. A symbol of excellence, service, and dignity. The conduct of Ms. Jensen and her team was not an isolated incident. It was a symptom of a diseased culture. A culture that judges a person's worth by the brand of their handbag rather than the ticket they purchased. A culture that has forgotten that our sole purpose for existing is to serve." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "So we will perform surgery. Effective immediately. Brenda Jensen, Kyle Miller, Chloe Webb, and Liam Porter are terminated. Their dismissals are for gross misconduct. There will be no severance packages. There will be no letters of recommendation. Our legal team will flag their records within the Global Airline Partnership database for professional malfeasance. They will find it exceedingly difficult to ever work in this industry again. The finality of the sentence was brutal. It wasn't just firing them. It was erasing them from the industry they had built their lives in. But that Mr. Adebayo continued, his voice dropping even lower, is merely excising the tumor. Now we must cure the disease. Mr. Maxwell, you will immediately earmark $20 million for the creation of a new mandatory company-wide training initiative. We will not call it sensitivity training. We will call it the Adebayo Standard. It will be designed by the best educational consultants in the world. And every single employee, from the baggage handlers at Heathrow to the reservation agents in Manila, to every single executive in this room, will be required to pass it. He looked directly at Maxwell. That includes you, Robert. You will be in the first class. The program will teach one thing: every person who steps onto our property is our guest. Their dignity is our paramount responsibility. Their background is irrelevant. The price of their ticket is irrelevant. Their clothes are irrelevant. They are our guest. Full stop. Anyone who fails the course will be given one opportunity to retake it. If they fail a second time, they are terminated. No exceptions. No appeals. The room was utterly silent. This was a purge on a scale none of them could have imagined. Finally, Mr. Adebayo said, his gaze sweeping across the faces on his screen. This happened on your watch, Robert. The rot festered under your leadership. So consider this your official performance review. You have 6 months, 2 quarters. I want to see a quantifiable, verifiable change in every metric of customer satisfaction. I want to see complaint numbers plummet and commendation letters soar. I want to see AuraWing become a byword for respectful service. If you cannot achieve that in 6 months' time, your replacement will be sitting in that chair. He didn't need to raise his voice. The threat was absolute. He leaned back, his part in the meeting concluded. That is all he said. The screen went dark. For a full minute, no one in the boardroom moved or spoke. They were in shock. They had all known Tunde Adebayo was a tough businessman, but they had mistaken his quiet demeanor for a hands-off approach. They had been wrong. He was not a distant owner. He was a titan who had just awakened, and he had just ripped the soul out of their company to build a new one in his own image. The earthquake that Amara's quiet text message had triggered was now tearing the old AuraWing Airlines apart, foundation by foundation. For Brenda Jensen, the world did not end with a bang, but with the cold, sterile click of her employee ID failing to open the crew lounge door. Her termination was delivered via a blunt email from HR and a certified letter that arrived the next day. The words "gross misconduct" and "immediate dismissal" swam before her eyes. Her first reaction was disbelief, followed by a wave of indignant rage. She had given 28 years of her life to this airline. She had been a loyal soldier. How could they do this over one little incident with some spoiled rich girl who couldn't take a joke? She called a lawyer, a man who, after hearing her side of the story, told her bluntly, "Brenda, you don't have a case. You harassed the daughter of the man who owns the company. There's a witness, and I assume audio evidence. You're lucky they aren't suing you for damaging the brand. My advice: take this as a lesson and move on." But moving on was not an option. Being a lead flight attendant for a major international airline wasn't just a job to Brenda. It was her entire identity. It was her status. It was the admiration in her neighbors' eyes, the discounts at hotels, the feeling of superiority she got walking through an airport in her crisp uniform. All of it vanished overnight. She soon discovered the true meaning of Tunde Adebayo's wrath. When she applied for a flight attendant position at a rival airline, she received a rejection within hours. The same happened with 3 others. Then a sympathetic HR manager she knew from years ago called her unofficially. "Brenda, I can't formally tell you this," the woman whispered over the phone, "but your file is flagged. Professional malfeasance. No one in the alliance will touch you. You're blacklisted." The word hit her like a physical blow. Blacklisted. It was a death sentence. Her comfortable life began to unravel with terrifying speed. Without her substantial salary, the mortgage on her stylish condo became an impossible burden. Within 3 months, she was forced to sell. She moved into a small, dreary apartment in a less fashionable part of town. The woman who once judged others on their handbags now found herself shopping at discount grocery stores, her own cart filled with generic brands. Desperate, she started looking for work outside the aviation industry. She applied for a management position at a high-end department store, confident her years of managing a first-class cabin would translate. The interviewer, a sharp woman half her age, looked at her resume. "So you were in customer service?" the interviewer asked. "I was a lead flight attendant." Brenda corrected, her pride still stinging. "Right. And why did you leave AuraWing after 28 years? Corporate restructuring." Brenda lied, the words tasting like ash. The interviewer gave her a look that was all too familiar. It was the same look of polite, dismissive judgment Brenda had given to countless passengers. She didn't get the job. Her final humiliation came when she finally landed a position as a cashier at a large, soulless big box store. She had to wear a cheap polyester vest and force a smile for 8 hours a day. One afternoon, a woman from her old neighborhood came through her line, her cart piled high with expensive goods. The woman looked at Brenda at her name tag, and a flicker of pity and gossip-worthy excitement crossed her face. "Brenda, my God, is that you?" the woman asked. In that moment, Brenda Jensen felt the full, crushing weight of her karma. She was now the one being judged, pitied, and dismissed. She was the one on the other side of the counter, invisible and insignificant. Kyle Miller, the gate agent, fared no better. Fired and blacklisted, his smarmy confidence evaporated. His dream of climbing the corporate ladder at an airline was dead. After months of unemployment, he took a job at a 24-hour fast food restaurant, working the graveyard shift. The small taste of power he had so enjoyed at the boarding gate was replaced by the endless, humbling litany of, "Would you like fries with that, Chloe and Liam?" The junior flight attendants were also terminated. As younger employees with less of a record, they weren't permanently blacklisted, but were effectively exiled. Their only path back into the industry was through a grueling probationary reapplication process at a budget regional carrier contingent, on them first completing at their own expense an intensive course on professional ethics. They had been followers, but they learned a brutal lesson about the cost of complicity. Meanwhile, the story of the Adebayo Standard became an industry legend. The Wall Street Journal ran a feature piece on AuraWing's radical cultural overhaul. It detailed the massive investment in training and the zero-tolerance policy for disrespect. It highlighted soaring customer satisfaction scores and a stock price that had nearly doubled since the Adebayo acquisition. The airline, once a struggling legacy carrier, was now the gold standard for service. The article ended with a quote from an anonymous executive, Amara Adebayo, didn't just buy an airline. He gave it a soul. It all started, believe it or not, with his daughter and a cheap canvas bag. 8 months after the flight that had shaken an airline to its core, Amara Adebayo found herself back at JFK's Terminal 4. The semester was over, and she was flying back to San Francisco to spend the summer interning at a prestigious digital arts studio. The familiar chaotic symphony of the airport was still there, but as she approached the AuraWing section of the terminal, a tangible difference hung in the air. The harsh fluorescent lighting had been replaced with warmer, recessed fixtures. The imposing fortress-like check-in counters were gone. In their place stood sleek modern pods, staffed by agents who weren't barricaded behind a barrier, but stood beside the kiosks, ready to assist. It felt less like a processing center, and more like the lobby of a high-end hotel. This was the most visible manifestation of the Adebayo standard, an environment designed for human interaction, not just passenger processing. Amara dressed once again in her uniform of comfort, and carrying her grandmother's steadfast canvas tote, watched for a moment before joining a line. She observed a young agent patiently guiding an elderly non-English-speaking couple through the check-in process. The agent used a small airline-issued tablet to translate her words into their language, her expression a model of unhurried empathy. There was no sighing, no impatience, only a focused and gentle determination to help. When it was Amara's turn, a cheerful agent with a name tag that read Maria greeted her. "Welcome to AuraWing. Heading somewhere sunny today?" "San Francisco." Amara smiled, hopefully. Maria's eyes briefly flickered to Amara's simple tote bag at her feet, but it was a neutral professional glance. There was no judgment, no smirk. "Great choice," she said, her fingers flying across the screen. "You're all set, Miss Adebayo. Seat 12A Premium Economy. Your flight is on time, departing from gate B42. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Any questions about the flight or your time at the airport?" "No, thank you. You've been very helpful," Amara replied, genuinely impressed by the proactive offer of assistance. "It's our pleasure. Have a wonderful flight." With time to spare, Amara decided to visit the new AuraWing lounge. Previously, an exclusive sanctuary for first-class passengers and elite status holders, it had been reimagined. While still offering a premium experience, one of her father's first directives was the creation of affordable day passes. Excellence should be something people can aspire to experience, not just something they are born into, he had argued. The lounge was now a more vibrant, diverse space. Business travelers still typed furiously on laptops, but now there was also a family playing a quiet card game, and a young couple toasting their honeymoon with glasses of sparkling water. The elitist hush had been replaced by a comfortable hum. She found a quiet corner and continued work on a digital painting, but her focus kept drifting. She thought about the immense, almost frightening power her father wielded, the power to reshape a corporate culture, to alter thousands of lives with a single directive. It was a weight she was becoming increasingly aware of. With that awareness came a complex pang of emotion when she thought of Brenda Jensen. It wasn't guilt. What the crew had done was inexcusable, but it was a somber recognition of the human cost of change. She hoped with a sincerity that surprised her that Brenda had found some path forward, that the brutal lesson had eventually led to some form of peace or self-awareness. It was a naive hope, perhaps, but one she held on to. Later at gate B42, the very same gate from her last trip, a new mini-drama unfolded. A flight delay only 15 minutes was announced due to a late-arriving aircraft. A man in a sharp suit phone, pressed to his ear, immediately began to berate the gate agent, a young man named Marco. "This is unacceptable. I have a connecting flight." "Do you know who I am?" the man boomed. The old AuraWing culture would have met this aggression with either fearful capitulation or surly indifference. But Marco, a graduate of the inaugural class of the Adebayo standard, remained poised. "Sir, I completely understand your frustration, and I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience," Marco said, his voice calm and steady. He made eye contact, didn't cower, but projected empathy. "I see you have a tight connection in Chicago. Let me do this. I'm putting a protection alert on your booking right now. As soon as we land, a gate agent will meet you with information on the fastest route to your next flight. We will also notify them to hold the gate for a few extra minutes if possible. I can't promise a miracle, but I can promise we will do everything in our power to get you there." The angry businessman was taken aback. He was prepared for a fight, not for a competent, proactive solution. His anger deflated. "Oh, well, okay then. Thank you." Marco smiled. "Of course. We appreciate your patience." Amara watched, mesmerized. That was the standard in action. It wasn't a script, it was a philosophy. It was about seeing the human behind the complaint and replacing conflict with assistance. When boarding began, Marco scanned Amara's pass. "Enjoy your flight, Ms. Adebayo," he said with a genuine smile, his eyes meeting hers with professional warmth. She stepped onto the plane and found her premium economy seat. The cabin was clean, the atmosphere serene. The lead flight attendant for this flight was a woman in her late 40s named Sarah, whose face was framed by laugh lines. She moved through the cabin with a calm authority that was reassuring, not intimidating. Amara watched as Sarah knelt to speak to a small child who was scared of flying, explaining what the noises of the plane meant in a gentle storytelling voice. Later, when a baby began to cry, Sarah was there instantly, not with a look of annoyance, but with an offer to the stressed mother. "Can I get you some water? Or perhaps hold him for a moment while you take a breather. He has a fantastic set of lungs, going to be a singer." The mother, initially mortified, laughed in relief. After the meal service, Sarah paused by Amara's row. "Everything comfortable for you today, miss?" she asked. "Perfectly, thank you," Amara said. Sarah's eyes did the same journey that Brenda's had, from Amara's face down to the simple canvas bag at her feet. But this time the look was entirely different. It wasn't disdain. It wasn't judgment. A flicker of quiet recognition dawned in her eyes, followed by a soft, respectful smile. She, like every AuraWing employee, knew the story of Flight 212. It was the foundational text of their new world. She leaned in slightly, her voice low and sincere. "Ms. Adebayo," she began, "I just wanted to say something. I've been with this airline for 17 years. For a long time, I thought I knew what good service was. I thought it was about being efficient, remembering drink orders, keeping the cabin on schedule." She shook her head slightly. The new training. The Adebayo standard. It reminded me why I wanted this job in the first place. It's not about serving meals at 30,000 feet. It's about taking care of people. It gave us back our purpose. And it started with you. So on behalf of many of us who were ready to quit this industry, thank you. The raw sincerity of the statement moved Amara more than any formal apology ever could. This wasn't a corporate talking point. It was a personal testament. This was the true result of her father's fury. Not just punishment, but transformation. Thank you for telling me that Sarah Amara, said, her voice thick with emotion. As the plane began its final descent into San Francisco, the golden light of late afternoon bathing the cabin, Amara pulled out her sketchbook and a charcoal pencil. She didn't draw the clouds or the distant sparkling bay. She sketched from memory, her pencil strokes swift and certain. She drew Sarah's face, focusing on the genuine warmth in her eyes and the deep laugh lines that spoke of a life of authentic smiles. Below the portrait, she wrote 2 words: the new aura. Her grandmother's bag rested at her feet, a humble, worn-out vessel of memory and art. It had once been the target of scorn, a symbol of everything a shallow culture despised. Now Amara realized it had become an accidental catalyst. It was proof that the most valuable things we carry, our history, our passions, our dignity, cannot be measured by a price tag. And on this flight, in this new world, it had helped create, it felt perfectly at home. That's the incredible story of how one quiet girl and her unassuming bag brought a corporate giant to its knees and forced it to rebuild itself from the ground up. It's a powerful reminder that respect isn't a premium service, it's a basic human right. The crew of Flight 212 made the mistake of judging a book by its cover, only to find out it was written by the person who owned the entire library. Their story serves as a hard-hitting lesson in karma, proving that how you treat people when you think no one is watching is the truest reflection of your character. What did you think of the crew's downfall? Was it justified? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to the channel for more real-life dramas, where karma always delivers the final verdict.